everybody. Glad everybody can make it out, and I hope to have a wonderful, lively discussion about getting back to school. Hello and welcome. My name is Jerry Wilson, and I am the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Center for Racial Equity in Education, also known as CREED. And I'd like to welcome you to the first Teaching in Color Twitter Spaces discussion of the school year. So Teaching in Color is an initiative of the Center for Racial Equity in Education that exists to build community and supports around educators of color and to advocate for policy changes in the best interest of educators of color and the students that they serve. As part of Teaching in Color, CREED hosts in-person and virtual gatherings like this one here. We also put on storytelling workshops, and we recently dropped a mixtape dedicated to teachers of color, and we'll be dropping that link soon if you have not heard it. And if you aren't already signed up for CREED emails, be sure to do that tonight. We'll also be dropping a link for you to do that to make sure you don't miss any of the Teaching in Color fun. So tonight's discussion is all about back to school. It's that time of year. I love this time of year. Ever since I was a kid, there's something about the fall. It's partly that I have a fall birthday, but it's also just that there's a crispness to the air. You really can't describe. But it also meant returning to school and seeing my friends. And once I became a teacher myself, it meant returning to school and seeing my students and my coworkers whose company I enjoyed so much. So this is a very special time, but it's also a stressful time. And we want to speak to some of that tonight. So this is a space for educators of color to check in with each other about the things on our mind heading into the school year. We have a couple of guest moderators who'll be helping to jumpstart the conversation, but we invite every educator of color in attendance to speak. Just send us a request and we will add you to the list of speakers, because certainly we would love to hear your perspective and how you are entering this school year. So our guests are Kumar Sathy and Principal Sonia Márquez. And I'll let them tell you a little bit about themselves before we jump into the discussion.
Welcome, everyone, to this gorgeous Tuesday night. This is Sonia Márquez speaking, principal of Oak Hill Elementary in High Point, North Carolina. We are in high gear this week preparing for open house. As a lot of you, if you have not started already, traditional calendars are experiencing open house this week. So everyone is kind of at DEFCON 3, and I get that. Myself personally, I worked until about 8:15 last night. And once I saw the sun starting to go down, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to spend the night at school. So I'm going to head out. But so I know that a lot of you have been spending an exorbitant amount of time in your schools, in your classrooms, preparing to make your spaces beautiful. And as an elementary school principal, I really admire the elementary teachers who love cute, right? So I see polka dots, I see calligraphy, I see pom-poms, I see calming corners and classroom libraries with shag rugs and throw pillows, and I have tents and twinkle lights in my building. I mean, our teachers are really going to the ends of the earth for making their spaces amazing. And that's what I love about elementary teachers, that there is no limit to what you all are doing in your classroom. It is so amazing, and I'm here for it all the way. I am a former middle school teacher. You would never see twinkle lights and calm down corners in a middle school classroom where I came from. I am a former high school assistant principal. Same. It's just not that cutesy, right? And so you elementary school teachers really, really know how to do it up. I'm loving it, and I'm here for it all the way. Just to introduce myself a little bit, like I said, I'm a former elementary school ESL teacher, taught ESL for 11 years. I am first generation American. My parents are from Mexico. Started as documented and came undocumented. So I have experience with what deportation does to families and the struggles that our first generation students experience on a daily basis. So I'm the daughter of immigrants and first generation American. So honored and thankful for my parents sacrificing, and everything that I've ever done and everything that I will continue to do will be in their honor, and to honor them for their struggles and sacrifices that they made to come to the U.S. Thankfully, we are now squared away in our legal status, but I will never forget the things that we experienced and what they had to go through to come to this great country of the United States. And now I came, as a teacher of English, just really seeing the struggles that my parents experienced as struggling to navigate the world as someone who is deficient in the English language. My parents are extremely intelligent, but were treated as second-class citizens because they were deficient in English, and vowed that I would create students in my classroom who were proficient in English and beyond, right? And so I really took that as a serious personal journey for myself. And I, have a master's degree in reading education from Fayetteville State and my school administration degree from North Carolina State. So really proud of my HBCU and my NC State local homegrown alma mater. And so now I'm just really giving back and looking forward to opportunities where I can mentor teachers, Latino teachers, and other teachers of color, but especially growing leadership in other Latinos who are teaching and growing in their own leadership. So I'm super honored and excited to be here. I want to thank Jerry and Camille for inviting me to come into this space and share this opportunity with you all.
All right. I am Kumar Sathy, and how am I supposed to follow that? Sonia, we're so glad that you are here. I know that your students, your entire school community has to be extremely grateful and appreciative of the perspective you bring, the experience you bring, and the work that you bring. The passion, your energy is palpable. I am I'm a couple of things right now, which complicates it. I'm a fifth grade teacher, elementary, and I'm in Orange County Schools in Hillsborough, North Carolina. I am currently in a bit of a dual role situation. I was recently offered the position of district K-12 equity facilitator. So I will be working under our chief equity officer as soon as we can get someone to replace me as a fifth grade teacher. So if any of you all know anyone that's an amazing fifth grade teacher looking for a role, hit me up. But that creates an interesting situation for me because I don't know how to not go all in on my classroom. I don't know how to partially teach. I don't know how to teach knowing that I'm going to step out into another role in any moment. So I'm not even going to try to make that adjustment. I'm just going to go all in, and I'm just going to teach as I normally teach, and see where that takes me once that transition happens. But I'm excited to make a greater impact. My undergraduate degree is not in education. It's actually in biopsychology. I was fascinated with brain and behavior studies and human cognition and how we learn when I was an undergrad, and started to do an America Reads volunteer program, and was utterly disappointed with the fact that everything that we knew about cognition and how students learn was just not happening in the classrooms, the public school classrooms that I visited. And it kind of shined a light on the fact that, honestly, my K-12 education system, like the system just failed me. It didn't see me, didn't embrace me, didn't really respond to me and my needs, and didn't really prepare me the way that I wish it had actually prepared me. I went to middle school and high school in rural West Virginia, not a particularly diverse space. So it definitely set the stage for me to really think about equity in education, despite a lot of pressure from family as a South Asian to go into a traditional career for Indians, whatever that might mean. I pushed on and went into education. I joined through Teach for America, taught in public schools, private schools. I've taught in multiple countries, international schools. I've taught in Title I and non-Title I schools. I've taught elementary and middle, and I've done a lot of projects and work with high school students. Yeah, I really got to work on my little intro statement, but that's me. I've been on this equity journey in one form or another for quite some time, and I'm really excited to be here. And I also want to thank Creed and Jerry and Camille for having me here. And it's just awesome to share a space with Sonia, who I've just learned about today and going to follow up with and follow on Twitter, because great things are coming.
All right, thank you both. So I want to go ahead and jump into the discussion. And the first question is, how are you feeling going into this new academic year?
That is a great question. And I think everybody is on the spectrum of emotion, from nervous to excited to a little fearful or hesitant. But I think overall, me personally, more than anything else, I am super, super hopeful and really excited about having a year that is somewhat normal, right? So we haven't had a quote normal year in quite some time. And even last year when we were back to in-person teaching, there were still so many COVID restrictions, and tracking cases and documenting, what do you call it, people who were exposed, along those lines, having, all of these cleanliness and COVID protocols and masking versus unmasking. I mean, even though we were live and in person, it still didn't feel normal. And so now we are back to something somewhat pre-COVID in our in-person instruction. It is so, so exciting. This is my first full year at Oak Hill Elementary in High Point, and I spent the entire last year being masked. So now that we've started back last week with teachers, I'm like, oh, that's what so and so looks like. So it's like, I don't even know my new staff. I spent an entire year with them and I don't know what they look like without a mask. So it's like just little things like this that we don't realize that we have taken for granted, right? So we've taken for granted the fact that we can build relationships with our staff, that we can get to know our new people, that we can mentor and serve and give back and build relationships. And it just really, no matter how hard we tried, it has really, really been difficult. So I'm excited about feeling normal in a post-COVID environment, and doing it in a way that kind of like brings us back to what we love and what we are committed to, which is building relationships, but then also doing it in a way that makes us feel safe and comfortable and smart in a post-COVID era. So in a short word, excited, but for so many different reasons.
Yeah, this is a great question. I could and I have talked about this for hours, but I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to sum it up with 2 words: nervously excited.
All right, nervously excited. I can tell you, as the parent of 3 second graders and 1 first grader, I am also nervously excited, hoping that the school year brings great things. I want to go ahead and pose the second question, which really ties into that, Kumar. What are you most excited about? What are you most nervously excited about?
Taking some extremely bold, culturally responsive, and inclusive instructional steps with my students for the short time that I'm honestly going to have with them, while keeping my eyes set on the impact that I'll have in this new role as a district equity facilitator.
So taking some bold steps. You'll give us a little preview of some things you have in mind, or is it all under wraps?
Yeah, I am not uncomfortable having uncomfortable conversations with my students, and I'm willing to tackle the tough topics. But just like we pace anything in the classroom and decide, okay, this is more for later in the year, or we'll do this later. I have a different time frame now. I don't know when I'm going to switch roles and be out of the classroom and supporting teachers and students in a different capacity. So I really want to make the most of the time that I have, which means making some major adjustments to the timeline for the rollout of some of these tough topics, starting with day 1. A lot of the things that I usually wait until middle of the year or end of the year, or to tie into a particular read aloud to really get into in terms of being inclusive, I'm just going to start from the beginning.
That was one thing that was always a challenge for me. Is I felt like sometimes my educators or my teachers save the most engaging topics for the end of the year, and we go the whole year learning things that I was still interested in, especially in social studies class as a history nerd myself. But a lot of the more interesting topics, or the ones that I felt I could personally relate to, were later in the year. Especially in AP US history, I definitely felt that. Right? To get to more modern stuff and stuff that dealt with issues and struggles that I felt like I had even as a high school student. So I can definitely understand that. Related to that question of what are you most excited about is the question of what are you most worried about?
It's bad enough that people tone police me, but to be honest, I tone police myself. With the imposter syndrome, the fear that my passion is going to be misinterpreted as intimidation, and the fear that I'm mansplaining when I, as a man, am passionately explaining something to a group of female educators in particular, just because of the nature of our profession. I honestly just worry that the way I tone police myself will hurt my message, that it'll cause me to distance myself from this work, or that it'll silence my voice ultimately. I'm just really passionate about this work, and I have a tremendous amount of expertise about it, despite how much more I still have to learn. But that fear of coming across as, for lack of a better phrase, as a know-it-all, or as anyone other than an imperfect educator on an equity journey, that fear is real. And despite all the many things that they worry about in this particular divisive political climate, and in this particular state with all the pushback against these conversations, the stuff I'm doing to myself and tone policing of myself and questioning myself, that's what I worry about the most, because it weakens my message and reduces impact.
Yeah, I hear that. And I feel that so much. And I think I think that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation tonight and why teaching in color exists, right? Because when you are the loudest voice in your context saying these things, it can feel like you are the only one sometimes, right? Or maybe in some contexts you are the only one willing to speak up and really talk about these heavy hitting topics like racial equity and equity more generally. So I definitely feel that. Sonia, I want to give you a chance to talk about what are you most excited about? What are you most worried about?
What I'm most excited about right now is the same thing, actually, that I'm the most nervous about. And that is that as a school leader, I really need for my teaching staff to mirror my student population. And so at Oak Hill Elementary, we are an extremely diverse student group. We are about 93% Black and Brown, but the majority of our students come from 17 different languages that are spoken. And that is Middle Eastern and East Asian, various countries in Mexico and Central America. And so how you honor their culture at the same time looking for the best teaching staff possible. So I have really made it a commitment to diversify my teaching staff so that students see themselves in their teachers. So for our Muslim students, for example, to hire, someone who practices the same faith or dresses the same way. And for our native Spanish speaking students like myself, to have a teacher that also speaks their language and eats the same food that they eat and can talk about their holidays and their cultures and traditions. And so that's what I'm the most excited about right now as the second year principal of Oak Hill Elementary. But I've been able to, as attrition has occurred, be able to replace them with some really good hires, but multicultural ones and other teachers of color. And so I'm super, super excited about that, about diversifying our staff. But at the same time, what makes me nervous is you can't just hire a teacher from Nigeria or a teacher from Puerto Rico and place them in a school that is going to be dangerous or detrimental to their mental state, right? And so you have to, before you bring them in or while you're bringing them in, create a space in your school that welcomes diversity, that truly, truly honors individuality, multiculturalism, languages, cultures, dress, food, and that kind of thing. And so that's what makes me nervous as well, is being a school leader who is first generation American, who is a very proud Mexican professional, and Spanish is my first language. And so to be bilingual and bicultural, I live it, right? And so this is a space for me that has not been easy. And so as I bring in, I have two teachers from Jamaica, one from Nigeria, one from South Africa, one from Costa Rica, two from Puerto Rico. So I, have been super intentional about recruiting teachers from other countries. But also I question, am I doing them a disservice by bringing them into a space that doesn't welcome them, that doesn't ask for their voice, right? And because I have been in spaces as a teacher and as an administrator where they want the brown face, but they don't want the brown voice, right? And so I know what that feels like. And so as a Latina leader and as a bicultural and bilingual professional, it's so, so important to me to provide this safe space for my teachers to come in and say, I know who I am. I know who I am as a person and as a professional and as, a professional in this predominantly white space. And yet I feel safe and yet I'm confident in bringing myself to this space. And so that I think the two things, what I'm proud of and what I'm excited about, is also what I'm fearful of, because I never want to bring someone into the space where they're going to be, silenced or endangered or questioned, right? And so I really take this on as a serious responsibility as a school leader. I really hope that I'm doing my teachers justice.
Thank you for sharing that. But I wanted to ask Sonia as a follow up, how much flexibility do you feel like you have to diversify your teaching staff as a principal?
Yeah, I'm so thankful for the opportunity to have complete control over who I hire. I think in my teaching staff, I've been extremely fortunate in Guilford County Schools to have that autonomy. It's an experience that I take very seriously. And I'm really thankful that I have the autonomy and that power to do that at the site-based level. I'm not sure what happens in other districts. Like I said, I'm starting my second year in Guilford County. I came from county, and the same, same there, very much a site-based decision. It's a good place to be in as a school leader, to go into it knowing that that's your priority. The thing about it is that in one particular incident, I offered 5 different people a position. Teachers now know that they have a lot of power in choosing where they want to work and under what conditions. And so for me, I really have to market my school and my leadership team as people that, like, hey, this is why you want to work with us, because we love, we serve, we give, we're students first, we are diversity and equity driven, things like that, because it's almost nowadays where we're selling our school just as much as employees are selling themselves.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you sharing it. And, from a policy standpoint, there's only so much that you can do at the school level in terms of like pay incentives, right? But we know that a lot of times the reason why educators leave is because of working conditions. Certainly, if you can do something to make your school a more attractive place for educators to choose to work, especially for educators of color, I think that that's outstanding. So this next couple of questions really speak to that as well. So I'd love to hear from both Kumar and Sonia. What are your plans for caring for and creating affirming spaces for your students of color, for yourselves, but also for other educators of color?
So as I think about this question, I can already hear my thoughts, and I'm realizing I'm only answering it in my head about my students and other teachers. I didn't even go to myself. I had to think about it again to realize, no, you did say for yourself, and we got to do that. So I think it's important to just acknowledge in this space that we have to remember ourselves in this equation. So that said, I think you'd asked me about this a little bit earlier, Jerry, with what I'm doing differently, what I'm excited about in terms of my timeline, especially for my students. For my very first morning meeting, I'm talking day 1 of school, Monday morning, once it feels like the majority has shown up in my classroom, I'm going to focus on giving them the space and the language to discuss what it means to be an inclusive classroom. That vocabulary in particular, inclusive classroom. We're going to discuss why it's sometimes harder and hard to include and easier to exclude. We're going to talk about how to disagree with, how to be frustrated by, how to be harmed by someone without actively excluding them. And that's hard. Like that's hard for all of us. It's especially hard for kids. But we're going to have that conversation. We're going to go through scenarios. We're going to talk about, without naming names of people, like, what is it about people and their personalities or what they bring to the table that makes us feel this internal urge to just exclude them, to just throw in the towel and just not have them in our groups, not have them in our circles, not invite them over to our table? What causes us to want to exclude? Why is it hard to include folks? And how do we still have all those feelings? Like, I don't, I want them to have permission to feel. Like, that's one of the things on my wall. Like, they have permission to feel. And we talk about those feelings. Like, how do you still have those feelings without actively taking the step to exclude? I'm going to give myself a lot of grace, especially since I have a dual role right now. Like, I'm crazy busy right now. And I'm really going to challenge my own imposter syndrome and my hangups. I'm 5'5", and this may mean nothing to anyone, but for a very long time, I have processed this internal hangup about my height. And when I walk into a space with someone who's significantly taller than me, my new boss, who's the chief equity officer, is like a super tall man. Like, it's that difference is pretty clear, and I think it kind of exacerbates that imposterizing that I tend to do. it seems crazy, but we all seem to find our own ways to hold ourselves back, and that's one of my ways. But I'm gonna really process that when I walk into spaces, when I'm presenting to teachers and administrators, when I'm working with the students. It doesn't really come to mind, but I think it really stands out when I'm presenting. I'm gonna check in with teachers and follow up with them. I think that's something that I've really felt was missing during as I was a teacher and I raised equity concerns. Everyone's busy, and central office staff and administrators, like they'll respond, but we have a checklist of things we got to do. So like then it's the next crisis, then it's the next issue, and I get it, like we keep moving on. But it would have really been nice, like a couple of weeks later, even a couple of months later, like, hey, just checking in with you, like you brought up this really big concern in the past, like how are things going in your classroom, has that been resolved, that kind of thing. So I'm really going to do some work with making sure I follow up with those, because I think that's a way to retain teachers and folks that are really into like doing this actual work, is to let them know you're not just there for them when they reach out to you or when they need something or when they're complaining. You value them and you want to hear more and you want to check in with them. And I mean, we all want to do that. We want to do that, but we just have to make it a priority to actually reach out again, even though they're not in our inbox at that moment. And I think the big thing, I'm going to be vulnerable here, as I process the idea of even accepting this role, which I was honestly hesitant to do because I'm already trolled enough as it is. But, this is a way more public role. As I processed that, I realized I'm definitely going to have to do some work on myself and really be thinking about how I'm going to handle the pushback and the opposition and the hate, to be perfectly honest. So, as I started therapy sessions, therapy's cool, y'all. So I don't mind saying, like, therapy's cool. But as I started some therapy sessions, just preventively kind of thinking about how I'm gonna walk into this and how I'm gonna be prepared to handle that pushback. There was something interesting that a therapist was doing with me at the end of the talk. She would check in with me, be like, so what did it feel like today to bring up these things with me and to have this conversation? But she did it every single time I talked to her. And I realized that's so powerful. Like, I'm gonna start doing that. Like when a teacher brings up a concern, when someone asks me for advice on something, like at the end of it, I'm gonna build in some time to be like, okay, like this is the first time you talked to me, or this is the second time you talked to me about this. Equity is inherently messy. It's easy to put our foot in our mouths. Like, what did it feel like to have this conversation with me? What can I do better? I'm just going to make a point of actually doing that. And the last thing, I'm going to make, I mean, I'm an equity facilitator. I'm going to be once I transition out of the classroom, but I'm going to facilitate, not obligate or evaluate.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot there to what you just said, and I appreciate you sharing that, and I appreciate the vulnerability and the transparency, and I just want to echo that. Shout out to therapy. Shout out to therapy and therapists. This has also been really helpful for me in navigating spaces that are really dominated by white supremacy, in my case, my university contacts, and helping me to stay the course and keep pursuing racial equity despite the challenges. So I really, really appreciate that. And Sonia, I want to give you a chance to answer that question as well. What are your plans for caring for and creating an affirming space for your students of color, for yourself, but also for other educators of color?
Yeah, I mean, Kamar like blew it out of the water. I'm a little ashamed to follow that. Thank you for your insight, Kamar, and for, as Jerry said, your vulnerability and your honesty. I think we're all kind of in that space too right now. We're feeling like there is a moment in all of us that where we experience that imposter syndrome, or we're just like, is this our life? Right? Do we belong here? Do I have something to offer? Um, and so that's what I think about too, for myself is, making sure that I do regular check-ins and remind myself that this is my opportunity to shine. Like life has really prepared me along the way for what I do and who I am and what I offer. Because I know that as a daughter of immigrants and as a first generation American, so many of my students are experiencing the exact same thing that I lived. And so their journey is my journey. And I can stand in front of them every day and say, look, I did this, I experienced this. This is what my life was like as a bilingual elementary school student. When I was in elementary school, to be honest with you, they could paddle you with rulers. So my teachers hit me when I would speak Spanish at school because it was like, English. We speak English here. And so I think about that all the time and how I was practically traumatized by being a bilingual person and being a Spanish speaker. And now, fast forward, X amount of years later, being the elementary school leader and remembering my elementary school experience as a bilingual person, I have to. I owe my students and I owe my younger self this experience where I'm caring for and creating affirming spaces for them to say, you don't have to be ashamed of being bilingual. You don't have to be ashamed of acquiring language. You don't have to be ashamed of eating different foods or wearing different clothes. You are who you are. And it's amazing. And it's a gift. You have something to offer to this world and this school that no one else does. And there was a time, to be honest with you, that I did feel ashamed of being Mexican or being, a Spanish speaker or being brown. And it was all because of this predominantly white culture that tells you that you're wrong or that something is wrong with you or that you're less than. And so I think that I love being where I am at Oak Hill in High Point. I love how diverse our school is. And I love that I was handpicked by my district to lead this school that I lead because of my experiences and how I can connect with my students on a way that I don't know that the average elementary school principal could connect with them on. I think that I do have a gift, for that, and I can create that affirming space for my students of color that are diverse and that are multicultural. Again, not to say that I can't connect with other students, but I definitely have a passion for that underserved and underacknowledged population. For my teachers of color, I mentioned earlier how I do go out of my way to recruit teachers that look like our students. And we have 35% of our students who are native Spanish speakers and about 40% of our students who are Black or African American. And so just really making sure that our teaching staff mirrors that. My next goal is to reach out to our East Asian and Middle Eastern population of students to have an adult, whether it be a teacher assistant, classroom teacher, cafeteria, office support staff, to make sure that they see themselves in our professionals in school and that it can continue creating an affirming space for our students and letting our staff know that we hold equity at high value. And so one of the things that I did last year as my first year as principal there is to have regular equity meetings and bring in a team that is very passionate and very well versed in what that looks like in practice and in the classroom. And so creating that professional development space as well. So I'm now seeking in financial resources, time, and to show our staff that this is something that I value as a school leader and that the rest of our teaching staff also values through professional development. So it's not just something that I pay lip service to, but that I've also provided professional development days and our finances as well. And then I've tied that to making sure that our staff knows that this is important to us as a school community.
I mean, just listening to Sonia, it just reminds me even more. Like, we talk a lot about educators and the teacher shortage. We have a principal shortage too. We have an administrator shortage. We have an issue with superintendents not wanting to stay in this difficult work right now, or not wanting to enter this difficult work right now. This is a particularly hard time to be a school administrator, and I'm just so grateful that we have administrators out there like Sonia who are thinking about ththese questions, these tough questions, doing this hard work, questioning themselves, like figuring out what they can do differently and better, and actually doing this hard work. I have to shout out to my own administrator as well, Dr. Meredith Mayer, whose doctoral dissertation was actually on district equity, and she got up on day one in our professional development back to school session, and equity was so much a part of everything she was talking about that you couldn't separate it from any of the individual components. And when she talked about culturally responsive teaching, it wasn't a buzzword she threw around. She actually was citing. She was actually talking about examples of collectivist and individualistic cultures. It's powerful when we have school administrators leaning into this work. And I just want to thank you, Sonia, for actually being part of that.
Oh, thank you, Kumar. I appreciate the shout out. I also, Dr. Mayer and I are former colleagues in Durham Public Schools. So I agree with you 100%. She's amazing. And I know she's doing great things where you are.
Thank you all. All right, so we are coming up on our last question for this discussion. And it's one that I'm very, very excited about. I want to know, what has been the chorus and what has been the verse of your time in the classroom? What themes have been recurring? What themes have you seen come back again and again during your career? And which themes have maybe you only seen once or twice?
So Jerry, you sent me this ahead of time, and I took this a little bit literally. So I'm pretty sure I did this wrong, but I also think I did this really right. I am not a musical person by any means, but I took you literally on this one. Verse: the classroom is a microcosm of the political and cultural cosmos. Space, the outer and inner space that is basking in a broth of oppression, a time-honored recipe of tradition, passed down to both be preserved and reserved, palatable for some, poisonous for others. We consider turning in our badges for eternity as we listen painstakingly to the moms for bigotry. We feel pressure to whitewash the tough topics as we stand before the whiteboard, especially given the moral panic and wave of censorship legislation, the well-executed white supremacist political stunt that has swept this nation. And then I go into chorus. But we can do hard things. We can talk about hard things, and we will embrace whatever pushback that brings.
Nice. Yeah, you did that exactly right. I appreciate that. I really, really appreciate that. And for those of you who don't know, we actually had, as part of Teaching in Color, a storytelling event back in April. And that event featured a few educators of color sharing their stories. And Kumar was one of those educators who shared their stories. And we actually have video of that. If you missed it, we actually have video of all the performances, and we'll be sharing that link as well. So stay tuned. So if you want to hear Kumar drop some more bars.
I need more. I, for one, need more of that. That is amazing. I love it. So, chorus and verse, gosh, I think about this kind of replay in my mind of all of the reasons why college students do not want to go into public education anymore. I mean, there's a myriad, a wealth of reasons for people not to be teachers, and yet here we are, right? And so there are so many things that I can't control, and I can't control the pay and all of the red tape and the logistics and the over testing and all of the reasons why teachers are in their classrooms every day saying, I wish it wasn't like this, right? Poverty, lack of parent involvement, and administrators who are bureaucrats, and like all of these things. And I can't overcome these things. I can't offer teachers more money to come and work for us. And so what I really have been trying to focus on as a school leader is, what can I control? And so, what I can control is creating a culture and a work environment where people want to work with us, where they want to join our family, where they want to put kids first, where they want to serve their constituents, where they fully believe that in a Title I space, in 100% school of poverty, that we can be the highest performing Title I school in the district, or we can be the highest performing Black and Brown school in the district, that students of color will learn and can achieve and overachieve and can beat the county average or the state average in achievement. And so I think for me, my chorus and verse is, I do get stuck, to be honest with you, on this kind of loop of what are we doing wrong, but I just remember so many reasons and so many things that we're doing right. And what I can control is finding the right people to reach our students and creating an environment where teachers don't want to leave, where teachers want to work with their friends every day, where they feel affirmed and valued and respected as professionals, where they're not micromanaged, where I tell them every day, I believe in you. You are here for a reason. I love what you do. I'm proud of you. You're doing great things. I know this is hard. I'm in the trenches with you. My staff, I think, after a year, have known that I will serve. Like I will serve, and there's no job too small for me. And so I put in the work just like they do. And I say, I'm not nickel and diming you on your time, because I know you're sitting in your bed with a top. I know that you are on Saturday morning in your pajamas as you drink coffee, researching lesson plans and looking on Teachers Pay Teach teachers, and creating a Pinterest board for your classroom. Like, I need for my teachers to know that, like, I love what you do and I see you. I see what you're doing. And I know that that comes from a place of love and a place of kids first. And so even though there's so much that we can't control in the school, there are some things, some very real things that I can control. And that's kind of my course and verse as a school leader.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, I really, really appreciate both of your responses to that question. But I did want to, in the last few minutes that we have together, put another shout out in. So both Sonia and Kumar are part of the upcoming Teaching in Color magazine that will be released soon. And I wanted to give you both a chance just to say a little bit more about what it was like to participate in that, and tell us a little bit about what folks have to look forward to in terms of some of the images, but also in terms of what things you shared that'll be in print in the magazine.
First, shout out to your photographer. Did a great job of making me feel comfortable, just giving some ideas, kind of coaching and guiding. He did an amazing job, just helping me feel relaxed and at peace and at ease with something that has not been really natural for me. And I know tonight you've been listening to me speak very passionately and fluently about who I am as a school leader. But to be honest with you, I've spent my entire career and my entire life behind the scenes. And so being in the spotlight is not necessarily something that I feel super, super comfortable with. Even though, I mean, you would think, my God, she's a school principal. Like, of course, she's accustomed to having a microphone in her hand or having hundreds of people listen to her. And actually, I'm not. Like, I'm really the kind of person that serves behind the scenes. I'm a get it done kind of person. And I would much rather be, serving drinks or, restocking things like, hey, what can I do for you? And I want to put other people out in front, and that kind of thing. And so this was one of my very first opportunities to be out in front. And so, yeah, it was a great experience. So kudos to Teaching in Color magazine for this experience. I really, really enjoyed it. I saw also that Teaching in Color NC has tweeted some of our pictures. So go to that Twitter page, Teach in Color NC, and you'll see a little glimpse of what's up to come. But it was a great, great experience, and I found myself really comfortable speaking. To be honest with you, I have no idea what I said. Most of the time, I just say things and no, people quote me or hashtag me and they're like, that's so profound. And I'm like, I don't know. What did I say? I don't know. And so, yeah, so I think we will all be surprised. Myself on some level, I'll be surprised. I'm like, did I really say that? Wow, I sounded really intelligent. But it was overall a great experience. And I'm so thankful for Creed and for Teaching in Magazine for this opportunity.
That really resonated with me because, just like you said about being an administrator, that has that, that kind of reservation about getting up and speaking and being not behind the scenes. I am an extreme introvert. And, but the people who watch me lead presentations or teach or share with teachers or educators or parents would deny that, pretty fiercely. But, we can flip a switch. And when we're passionate about something, introverts can become extroverts. And before I go, really answer this question, I want to say, because we're coming up on time, I feel like we not to step on your toes there, Jerry, but I feel like we missed an opportunity to hear from some of the folks out there who are listening in on this. And I just want to take a moment to elevate educator voices that are listening in that have something to share as well. I don't know if we'll have time in the segment to do it, but if not, at the very least, I would love to hear from you all. And I think we all need to hear from each other in this. There's something really therapeutic about that process, and like Jerry said before, not feeling alone. So maybe if you all could reply to some of the tweets that are going out there with this hashtag Teaching in Color about this space, and just share your feelings, your worries, what you're nervous, what you're excited about, what you're feeling about this year to come, so that we can really start building a network and build each other up. As for this idea of this magazine, it's a lot of what we've been hitting on today, and I love the vulnerability that we've opened up in this space. Because some of the most passionate equity leaders, in every sense of that word, are often, really nervous about this work and feeling that imposter syndrome. So I think it's important to recognize the humanity in that. And there's nothing quite like having yourself featured in a magazine, or I guess the inaugural issue of the magazine, to really set fire to your imposter syndrome. I mean, I can sit here and ask myself all day long, do I belong in this space? And am I really someone people really even should be listening to with all the mistakes that I've made along the way on this equity journey? You can ask yourself that over and over again, but then you do events like today and get propped up like you are today, or be featured in a magazine, and you really start to question your own inner negative narrative about whether or not you really belong in this space. So I think that's the biggest thing that it did. I haven't seen any of the pictures yet. I am notoriously not photogenic, so I'm both nervous and super excited to maybe possibly have some good pictures of me. But yes, as Sonia was saying, photographer was absolutely amazing, incredibly talented. It was just so fun doing that. I also don't remember what I said, but I remember how I felt when I said it, and I remember I was in a deep space of vulnerability. And I definitely kind of completely removed my filter, maybe a little too much, with all the feelings and all the feels. So we'll see what that brings and what that leads to, but definitely opened up a space for vulnerability, and I really deeply appreciate the opportunity.
So again, I just want to thank our participants today. We really, really appreciate all that you all shared today and your willingness to speak from your experience, but also to be vulnerable and open. And I'm sure other folks found it inspiring and helpful, as did I. So again, this is the first Teaching in Color Twitter Spaces discussion of the school year. We hope to have one of these every month. And the next one is scheduled for Tuesday, September 20th. So we hope to see you back then. We'll be putting out stuff on social media, promoting it before then. But please, if you enjoyed tonight's discussion, be sure to follow the Teach in Color NC account and the Creed_NC account on Twitter. And it's also the same on Instagram as well. But we're always putting out content and trying to engage educators of color because that is the mission of Teaching in Color, is to build a supportive community around educators of color, and ultimately the push for policy change, for policies that support and really acknowledge the wonderful work that educators of color do every single day for the children they serve. We really, really appreciate your time, and we hope to see you all on Tuesday, September 20th for the next Teaching in Color Twitter Spaces conversation.